Hello. Hello, thank you for attending this talk. So I'm Benoît Sureau, partner at PwC, leading risk activities and trust AI offering. I'm very happy to chair this talk today, scaling AI by building trust, or say differently, can security and trust accelerate the adoption of AI? This seems quite tricky because for a lot of people, if you want to innovate, you should not have too many regulation, too many constraints. And on the other side, on AI, a lot of people are saying there are a lot of risks and we should control it more carefully. And the news are really demonstrating that's a hot topic because yesterday, I'm sure you didn't miss two big initiatives. The first one, of course, is the fact that the European Council signed the EU Act. So within 20 days after the release of the text in the Parliament, it will be in force with then different targets, 6 months, 18 months, 1 year, sorry, and 2 years. And also at the AI summit, AI Security Summit, Safety Summit, sorry, 16 companies, big companies like ChatGPT, IBM, and so on, took a new commitment to deliver safety AI. So all these big international companies understood that trust is a key topic to adopt AI and to accelerate AI. So today, to discuss this topic, I am with Sophie Dionnet. Sophie, thank you for being with us. Sophie is a global VP Products and Solution at DataIQ. She's there for 5 years now, after 15 years in the financial industry. Thank you very much, Sophie.
Thanks, Benoît.
And Fabrice Thiers, a director in the UK, leading globally the responsible AI initiatives, working in AI for now 20 years and more, and with whom I'm working a lot on the Trust AI initiative. So very happy to discuss with you today. And I will start with the first question. So we deal with scaling AI. The first question will be, with what you see with your clients, have you seen, since ChatGPT has been released, really an emergence of AI, and what do you exactly see? Is there AI at scale at this stage?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So there have been a lot of discussion, a lot of proof of concept. Let's see where it really scales the use of AI. And we're going to talk about Gen AI, but also traditional AI and machine learning. Few ways it scales. First of all is when you see Gen AI in productivity apps, in power apps, copilots, everyday AI type of activity where AI does augment everyday task of workers or employee. Copilot is a good example and is really scaled throughout organization with all functions and a lot of users. We also see AI scaling what we call the superhuman search and retrieve techniques, where you use AI and large language model to go through a lot of information and retrieve information when you search. It could be in contact center when you want to find information tailored for your customers. It could be investment banks looking at information, investment information tailored to customers again. This is where you have tailored information, you use large language models. We also have traditional AI we see quite a lot in contact center to triage complaints and accelerate some complaints as well with the use of machine learning. The first use case I would single out as well is some use of deep learning and computer vision. Insurance is a good example where some techniques allow to look at claims, so take pictures, do some claims appraisal and evaluation straight away using computer techniques, and then helping to streamline the claims process. So it's not scaling everywhere, but for some business processes, we see productivity increases up to 5x when it's for specific business processes.
Thank you very much, Fabrice. And you, Sophie, via your DataIQ and your clients, more than 600 clients.
Yeah, so we have the pleasure of working with above 600 organizations, and I think what's very interesting with this is that it gives us a good overview of where the reality of what's happening in the field. So first things first, definitely when Gen AI started happening last year, it gave a boost. And it gave a boost in some organizations to reinvest or reopen or revisit also the approaches and habits to start to see how, based, I'd say, the initial excitement around AI, which started happening, let's say, 10 years ago, there would be a need to revisit or just continue doing the same. The reality is that today, when we look at the different organizations, they are at very, very, very different levels of deployment. Some of them have made very, let's say, limited, focused investments on having strong teams of data delivering for the rest of the organizations, and it does yield some benefits. But the question with that is, what is the speed, what is the scale? And I would say also how much these companies tend to hyper-focus on high-yield use cases, but is it transformative enough at the end of the day? And others are making an investment that is much more based on democratization, on putting data in the hands of people that, let's face it, will not do what is real AI, but will start using data themselves. What I think is interesting today with Gen AI is that previously when we were having conversations with customers, in most cases, AI was here to deliver things that you would tend to be proud of in an annual report. And let's face it, in an annual report, you never speak about operational efficiency. Gen AI today has completely changed that, because the first application in large organizations is actually to look at things that are very practical, attached to real business processes that are running today. And I personally think that this is actually gonna maybe realign overall AI strategies with what companies realistically are gonna be able to deliver with these.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophie. Maybe to share our own experience at PwC in France, we decided to deploy globally Copilot and 365 for all people working at PwC to reach this scale as fast as possible. So what I understand from your experience is that the scaling depends on the types of use cases, also the type of industries, the mindset of the industries. So what would be for you the key drivers to scale? And is there any great driver, or is there any specific constraint that could slow down the path of the scaling, the AI adoption?
Absolutely. So looking at a macro level, I would say it starts from the top. Organization scaling AI, the conversation starts at board level and CEO level to get the sponsorship, to get the space to innovate, to get the time and the budget to innovate, also to look at ethical principle, risk appetite, consideration like sustainability, and really embed AI in a strategy and in a roadmap. So start from the top and get buy-in from the top. I would say a second important driver is to get the skills in the organization. Users understanding about AI and being trained, but also making sure you have the data science skills. These techniques are complex. Organizations are receiving a lot of innovation, new models, new techniques every day. They need to make sense out of it. They need to embed in their business processes. They need to embed in their infrastructure. So this is very important. An organization not having all the skills do struggle. The third one is break the silos, really. Organization needs to engage with third party. They need to engage with AI suppliers like DataIQ. They need to engage with the open source ecosystem. They need to collaborate with startups. The silos are really, really slowing down, and collaborating and breaking the silo is a very, very important component of success. And we have the very good, I would say, hygiene factors. Good data for AI, sort out data, get good quality data, make data available in the right way. Think about your infrastructure that is scalable, infrastructure that is versatile to deal with continuous innovation, have the right mindset, and look at overall good governance. So these are all, if you like, the building blocks that organizations need to address to really, really be able to scale.
Sophie?
I will double down a bit on what you're saying, because I think notably the notion of silos is super important in my perspective. One of the key, so we have to, when we look at our customers today, some of them have a few licenses, some of them have more than 1,000 for the same type of size of companies. And it means something, actually. It means something in how they're looking at how they want to use data. I think first things first, those that actually do scale are those who stop talking about AI as a technique. If you're stuck to saying, oh, deep learning is flashy, my God, what can I do with it? It actually steps completely the conversation away around solving a business problem, which is a bit of a big word, but more realistically around embedding into a real day-to-day practices. And I think today, from what we see, is those customers that do scale are those who manage at some point to step away from a technical conversation to a very business-applied one, and also start stepping away from looking at precise, specific capabilities and what these capabilities are supposed to be delivering inside the organization, down to integrating it everywhere that they need across their different business processes. After that, everything else that you said around, board buy-in, of course, without that, it just remains usually extremely limited and fragmented. Ethical supports, having the right type of governance, I think is very important. And I'll end up on something that for us is very important, is the nature of inclusiveness. Just as a personal anecdote, I used to work in financial services. We had a lovely data scientist who worked for 2 years on a wonderful liquidity signal model that I don't think was used by anyone, simply because no one understood it and no one was capable of opening the hood and looking underneath it. Having an inclusiveness in how experts are working or integrating business professionals in that building process is actually absolutely critical to make sure that whatever efforts are being done gets rolled out, and also that these business users themselves are then in the capacity to build beyond.
Thank you, Sophie. And I can also add that for the deployment of AI technology, what is also key, and you mentioned it, is the training. The fact that people understand how to use. This is a tool. This will improve it. It's augmented AI, I say, augmented intelligence, I say, Luca from UNO this morning. So it is a tool, and people should learn how to use it. And it's very, very important to scale AI, not to leave this topic only to technical people, but to train everybody in the company. Everybody must understand how it works, not deeply into detail, but how it works and how they can use it with productivity. So that's very important. Maybe with my introduction regarding the discussion between scaling AI and the trust, and what we've seen, as I said, at the AI conference in Seoul. What is your view on that, this paradigm between scaling and trust?
I'll start and Sophie will add, but I think there is a lot of, the wave of trust is there and is there to stay, and you see all the big players coming together and wanted to work on safety, wanted to build trust and being very, very proactive. Of course, we see some tension in some organization. We saw in OpenAI, in Google, some of the safety teams being released. But there is definitely the conversation on how to bring trust in order to scale with the global players who are very, very proactive. Of course, regulators are bringing the subject of trust to the front. We talked about the EU Act. The US are following suit with the US AI Bill of Rights. We see in Singapore a lot of work being done with MAS on, it's called Project Veritas, on building trust in financial services organization with the use of AI. So all the regulatory landscape is really bringing this topic of trust to bear. And I would mention also standard setters. It's very interesting to see NIST in the US, ISO, Sentinelec really putting some standards of trust together that are going to be used in the medium term. So we see different level of trust, but with an aim to really bring innovation to bear and in a way give clarity to the market.
Want to add something?
Yeah, so we started work. Governance has always been a key pillar of our software ever since DataIQ was started. But we started working on a specific extension tied to governance a bit more than 4 years ago. And let's face it, when we started working on it and we were discussing with customers, the reaction was intrigued. People were asking questions, but the immediate understanding around why this was going to be important for them was not very clear. And it was not very clear internally either. That conversation definitely started shifting 1 or 2 years ago, but I can tell you that since 1 month and a half, definitely we're having completely different conversations because the urgency is there. What I would say on my side is that my personal belief is AI can't scale without these types of components in place. And if we try to make a parallel with something that is different but is also very present at VivaTech, it's the same on sustainability topics. If you don't have rules, if you don't have guidelines, if you don't have a common taxonomy to speak about risk, to speak about rules, rules can be painful, but at least they give a reference point by which you can start looking and mapping at the world. So I would say that today, on the governance side, on the trust side, there are some real appetite for some customers that have been trendsetters, that have been always putting trust at the heart of their brands, and that are really embracing this. For others, it will be a slower motion, but definitely it is something that is here to stay. And if we don't want to enter in this age of regulated AI with an AI slowdown, it needs to be embraced as a scaling function.
Thank you very much. So in this first part, we discussed the fact that trust is a way to scale AI. And definitely all of us are really convinced by this. But this is a principle. No, let's talk concretely. When you want to put in place those controls, those governance, what have you seen? What are the kind of innovation in controls you've seen so that you could deploy AI with security, with transparency? Is there any specific way to do it? Any specific methodology? What's your point of view on that? Do you want to start, Sophie? Or?
I think for anyone that has worked in regulated services, we usually see the arrival of a new regulation as something that is semi-scary, that will require a lot of work, that usually requires a lot of valuable intervention from partners like PwC to explain what it's about, how it should be enforced, and so on and so on. But realistically, I mean, for those of you who have worked in a bank, model risk management, most of the time, is looked at something that is both excessively useful and excessively painful, because it slows down time to market of new models, it can slow down decision making. GXP on pharma side is working exactly in the same way, because it creates natural silos. It's the purpose of these rules. So the way that these controls are going to be embraced, how to make them inclusive by nature, that is, how to make sure that someone building a product is actually going to be in a position to know in advance what are the type of controls that they should be embedding. How do we create parallel environment between people doing controls and checks and actual enforcement? In my view, is going to be absolutely critical. And then it goes back to something that is just bread and butter of anyone who is working on enforcing a new piece of regulation or a new piece of governance. It's from translating principles into actionability. And that actionability needs first to be thought about real human beings who actually really need to know what they have to do on a day-to-day basis. So re-breaking things down between a level 1, level 2, level 3 of controls. For those of you who are familiar with these concepts, it's normal to think about that. But for many industries, actually the arrival of something like EUAA Act is going to be a full discovery, because all the industries that have not been trained to look at segregation of rights in access to models or in training models are going to need to revisit and rethink their own processes. I think the good news is that from a technology standpoint, it is possible to then streamline this once it is well outlined.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And you, Fabrice, we had the occasion to work together on mission to deploy AI governance, AI controls, both in financial industry but also sometimes in the industry. Can you share with us the main elements of this approach?
Absolutely, and thanks, Sophie, for mentioning PwC. We have been very, very busy actually working with organizations cross-industry really on proactively setting control, looking at AI risk. And the key ask is really put control to bring clarity, bring the right safeguards to the organization to be able to innovate fast, innovate safely, innovate at scale. So it's a very positive spin, if you like, on understanding risk and putting controls together. Few learnings for success, really. One is start at the top of the house. Board are asking for controls and safeguards to have this ability to innovate fast and safely and within their risk appetite. So we start from the top. Working with control, I would say we do not recreate the wheel. We augment existing control, existing risks policy, existing standards for AI and for Gen AI, and very importantly, make sure these controls are well understood and owned in the organization. Without ownership, you cannot scale AI. Perhaps what's a little bit different with AI and Gen AI is that you have to share control with third-party providers, with partners. You have to put control in common, and you have to operationalize this control with your alliance partner, with startups, with all your providers. And this is a bit new in the way you will operationalize some controls. Also, the pace of revisiting controls. We were talking last year about machine learning. We have been super busy with Gen AI, large language model. Probably agent-based modeling is coming up as the next wave. So there is this wave of very short cycle of innovations, if you like. And your controls need to be clear enough to sustain this, but dynamic enough, if you like, in the approach to evolve the control with the pace and the volume of innovation. And the last point is really training, as you mentioned, Benoit. Everyone in an organization has to understand what the human control would be and what they have to do, and how subject matter experts need to be reviewing some of the Gen AI outcomes, for instance. Control owner on the technical side have to understand what they have to do in terms of implementing this control. You need to think about automation and having the right infrastructure, and you're doing that very well at DataIQ. So there is really creating the awareness throughout an organization to make this control being very implemented. But the main message is get buy-in in an organization. Again, break the silos, because you will have to implement data control, model control, technology control, operational controls, cross-functional on a global scale, and think about operationalization and ownership. So these are the big learnings, if you like, we have.
Thank you, Fabrice. And Sophie, also, you had some...
The one thing I can say, just to maybe, is to share a bit of examples of what we have seen are happening at our customers. Definitely, and to loop back with the theme of the roundtable, we're here to talk about scaling. We're not just here to talk about controls for the sake of controls. They're fun, but they don't necessarily deliver any form of value at the end of the day. All our customers today that have been scaling massively in usage of data to do descriptive analytics, to do AI, to do Gen AI, whatever, all of them have put in place the right balance of democratization at the very beginning of the innovation funnel, very restricted and tight governance at the moment of selecting and operationalizing. If we take the example of a customer like G has been using massively DataIQ across their organization. The reason they have been able to do that with the right amount of trust is because they have a very strong gated governance process. And that governance process, now fully operationalized, allows them to have the right velocity from innovation down to operationalization with trust, and with also, I would say, beyond all risk limitations, avoiding any form of duplication of work, which at the end of the day is also very important. You don't exactly want every single person in your organization to reinvent the wheel by having their own views of, for instance, how a customer should be scored. So I would say that there's a real win-win between the two notions. And when everyone is going to be starting engaging on this governance path, which is going to become the new must-do, keeping it tightly connected to that notion of scaling is going to be also a way to facilitate the whole change management down the line.
Okay, and DataIQ, how can you help with this in this kind of example, control implementation?
Nothing, we can't do anything. No, DataIQ, typically we've been highly investing on making sure that when you know what you want to do, we give you the means to operationalize this with the right level of flexibility to have all the tool sets needed to make the right choices at the individual data project level. My strong belief is that there's no one-size-fits-all. You don't control Gen AI projects as you would do for statistical analytics, that's for sure. the other side. So there's a question around having all the right tools, and there's a question of being able to enforce at scale. Taking again the example of GE, they used to have a governance process that was sitting between 9 different tools. Now it's fully operationalized in only one, on top of all their AI analytics. It's just a question of acceleration and making sure that, again, we shift from having governance as a burden into something that becomes a driving and scaling function. And I will just close on that is another of the customers, so Macquarie Bank, which is an investment bank. Same thing, we've seen them having a massive scaling strategy, very successful, and they tell us publicly that they would not have been able to do that without implementing and enforcing a strong governance with the right tools to make it happen and make sure that it wasn't yet another burden.
Very clear, thank you very much. Before asking for questions, maybe a last question for you. Do you have some example of actual control put in place, actual mission you finalized to controls, to put in place the governance of AI, and what can you share with people today?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to mention one, was around the continuous monitoring of the model. Traditionally, when you look at deterministic model, you will look at control before you release models, and the evaluation and the controls are being put in place. With AI models that will keep evolving, which are non-deterministic in nature, you need to keep monitoring your models in production. You need to think about the threshold where their behavior will be acceptable or not. You need to think about the fallback option if your AI model, stop behaving the way you want them to behave in terms of performance. So there is a strong element of continuous monitoring to be put in place. Of course, a lot of work around control around data privacy, data protection, because at the end of the day, AI use a lot of versatile, diverse, dynamic data set. And perhaps the last point I would make is control will have to keep evolving because techniques will keep evolving. So you need to be agile, you need to be flexible, you need to be versatile in the way you set your controls.
Thank you very much for this insightful discussion. Thank you very much. I hope that you will now consider trust as a key component of the deployment and the adoption of AI. And we have some minutes left 3 minutes left for any question you may have for us. So please do not hesitate. So how?
Hi. Currently, I'm an INSEAD student, and there are people who are doing their business education along with their.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Better.
Sorry. Yeah. So,
That's better.
Yeah. So there are people who have tech backgrounds, and now they are taking business education, but they are very much fascinated by AI. So they would like to understand how AI and business is getting together. I like the idea that you said there has to be a data governance policy and an AI governance policy. How much of a technical skill and how much of a business skill is required if somebody wants to develop their career into this kind of work?
I would say it takes 2 to tango. You need actually to have business with a decent understanding of data, and you have data with a decent understanding of business. If you don't reconcile the two, it's hard. And at the same time, you do need the 2 types of skill sets. So I'm not sure that you can do one without the other, to be completely honest.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm a student of a SEC Business School doing a digital transformation program. And my question is, for you as an expert, how can we deal with our team resilience to digital transformation? It's not a secret that very often teams see AI as a competitor who can take their jobs, who can create a lot of problems. How do you deal with it? I think it's really a problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really looking at the opportunity, and you will see with AI some of the mundane tasks will go away, where subject matter expert can do their job, in a targeted manner. For instance, when we use AI with lawyers, lawyers, when you join a law firm in the first 2 to 3 years, you read a lot of documents, you do a lot of mundane work. Now there is really an acceleration to learn to use AI techniques, but to accelerate basically the skill set building. So in the first 6 months, basically, you will absorb much more knowledge and get much more expertise to be at year 3 much more quicker. So there is really how you adopt AI, which is really the conversation here.
Thank you, Fabrice. I'm sorry, I've been told that we're over the time we had. So thank you all for attending this discussion. And we are all here for some minutes. So thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Fabrice.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thank you.